The moment most owners misread a Belgian Malinois is the split second before it moves. There is no visible debate, no barking escalation, no dramatic warning. The dog locks in, decides, and acts. And to the unprepared owner, it feels sudden. But it wasn't sudden. The decision happened long before the movement did. The Malinois had already scanned the environment, evaluated pressure, measured distance, and resolved the outcome internally. What you witnessed was not impulsivity, it was execution. Belgian Malinois do not operate on emotional hesitation. They operate on environmental clarity and internal thresholds. Once a threshold is crossed, action follows without friction. That absence of friction is what people interpret as unpredictability. Most companion breeds display uncertainty through visible cues. They bark, circle, whine, posture, or delay. The Malinois often does none of that. It calculates silently and commits fully. This is not recklessness. It is the result of selective breeding for decisive working performance under pressure. Military and police lines were refined for dogs that could engage without wavering. Hesitation in those environments was liability. So the instinct to act quickly is not aggression. It is efficiency under stimulus. The Malinois does not need prolonged emotional processing once a conclusion is formed. The conclusion itself is the trigger. Owners who expect visible warning signs are often the ones caught off guard. They are waiting for noise. They are waiting for drama. But the Malinois communicates internally before it communicates externally. The stillness before action is not calmness. It is assessment. The intensity in the eyes is not tension, it is alignment. By the time movement happens, the outcome has already been accepted. This is why clarity matters more than affection with this breed. Structure matters more than reassurance. Stability matters more than verbal correction. Because the Malinois does not hesitate when structure collapses. If leadership fluctuates, instinct compensates. If boundaries blur, thresholds lower. If emotional energy spikes, engagement tightens. The dog adapts faster than the owner realizes. That speed is what creates the illusion of overreaction. But it is not an overreaction. It is a proportionate response to a stimulus that has already been calculated. The calculation simply happened faster than the human noticed. A Belgian Malinois reads micro shifts in posture, breathing, and environmental tone. It notices tension in a stranger's gait. It detects uncertainty in a handler's voice. It responds to pressure long before most breeds would. And once the response pathway activates, it does not stall. There is no internal argument. There is no second guessing. There is movement. This is why inexperienced owners struggle. They assume intensity equals instability. They assume speed equals impulsiveness. But intensity without structure is chaos. Intensity within structure is precision. The Malinois was designed for precision. For rapid assessment. For decisive engagement. Hesitation was bred out of the equation. When owners understand this, the breed becomes predictable. Not because it slows down, but because its thresholds become clear. Clarity creates stability. Stability creates trust. Without clarity, the dog fills in the gaps. It interprets uncertainty as risk. It interprets inconsistency as instability. And in working breeds, instability activates instinct. That instinct is not malicious. It is protective. It is functional. It is efficient. The Malinois does not hesitate because it was never meant to. It was meant to decide. Watch a Malinois in a controlled working environment and you will see the difference immediately. The dog waits without fidgeting. It holds focus without distraction. And when the cue arrives, it moves without delay. There is no emotional buildup. No visible internal conflict. Just a clean transition from stillness to action. That transition is the hallmark of the breed. The problem arises when owners attempt to soften this instinct instead of directing it. Suppression creates friction. Friction creates confusion. Confusion lowers thresholds. A confused Malinois does not slow down. It tightens. It becomes hypervigilant. It watches more closely and acts more quickly. This is why emotional volatility in the handler destabilizes the dog. Sudden tone shifts, inconsistent enforcement, fluctuating boundaries, all of these are read as environmental instability. Instability accelerates decision-making. The Malinois assumes responsibility when clarity disappears. It does not wait for reassurance. It does not wait for consensus. It acts. That action can look protective. It can look dominant. It can even look aggressive. But at its core, it is decisive environmental control. Owners who mistake decisiveness for defiance often escalate the situation. Escalation increases pressure. Increased pressure lowers the dog's engagement threshold further. The cycle compounds quickly. Understanding breaks that cycle. Recognizing the early assessment phase changes everything. Because the real moment is not when the dog moves, it is when the dog locks in. The locked gaze. The shifted weight. The breath pause. Those are the true signals. By the time barking begins, the decision is already old news. The bark is not the beginning, it is confirmation. And confirmation means commitment has already formed. This breed does not hesitate because hesitation was never useful in its historical function. Guarding livestock, pursuing suspects, clearing buildings, delay meant failure. Decisiveness meant survival. So the instinct remains. It lives beneath the calm exterior. It waits for stimulus. And when stimulus crosses the internal line, movement is immediate. There is a psychological confidence in the Malinois that many owners underestimate. It does not seek validation before acting. It seeks clarity. Once clarity is established, it proceeds. This can be intimidating to those unfamiliar with working line behavior. The speed feels personal. The intensity feels confrontational. But it is neither. It is neutral decision-making under stimulus. The dog is not reacting emotionally to you. It is responding structurally to the environment. When that environment is stable, the Malinois is composed. When that environment is unstable, the Malinois becomes decisive. The change can appear instantaneous. But the shift is logical. It follows an internal sequence. Scan, assess, conclude, act. That sequence runs faster than most humans process external events. Which is why the breed feels ahead of its handler. In reality, it is simply operating at its design capacity. Owners who align with that capacity experience extraordinary reliability. The dog becomes focused, steady, controlled. Speed turns into precision. Owners who resist it experience friction. The dog begins compensating. It starts filling in leadership gaps. And that is when hesitation disappears entirely. Because the Malinois does not stall in uncertainty. It resolves uncertainty. And resolution often means action. The key insight is this: hesitation is not a trait of high-functioning working breeds. Clarity is. When clarity exists, behavior is controlled. When clarity fades, instinct accelerates. This is why the breed demands internal stability from its handler. Not loud dominance. Not intimidation. Stability. A stable handler creates predictable thresholds. Predictable thresholds create measured responses. Measured responses preserve trust. Without that stability, the Malinois defaults to instinctive efficiency. It does what it was designed to do. It makes the decision. And once the decision is made, it does not hesitate.